The views expressed on the following broadcasts do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT, Take 12 Radio, or our affiliates. The opinions on this show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice and are those of the host, co-host, and guest. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
One day at a time with its failures and fears, with portion of pain and burden of care, we must meet.
Welcome to Walking Through the Language of the Heart, a journey into the grapevine writings of Alcoholics Anonymous co-founder Bill W. And now, here are your co-hosts, Chris S. and the Monty Man.
Well, welcome aboard, one and all. Welcome back to another fine episode of Walking Through the Language of the Heart with our good friend Chris S. Hey, buddy.
What is going on, Monty? It's really good to be back on schedule here with you.
Yes, here we are. Zippity-doo-dah. Now, the viewers can't see it because we're not on video, but we have a new acoustic board behind us, and I finally got installing something like that. You think, this is going to be simple. Well, you end up tearing up the whole studio because if you're kind of manic like I am, you start a project and then you're like, I probably should do this too. Well, I do this. Then I have to do something else on top of that, and then something else. And pretty soon the place is a mess. But it's all cleaned up and we're raring to go.
Yeah, that's good. You know, Monty, I just want to take a second to thank you for putting on this show and having. I really have enjoyed, what has it been, a year and a half now? We've been doing this. I really enjoy it, and I get a lot out of it, and I know it takes a lot of work on your part, and I just wanted to take a special moment just to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, and likewise, my friend. I cherish our friendship and our brotherhood in recovery, and doing shows like this, especially with you, is an honor and a privilege. And it's a gift. It really is a gift, and it's a lot of fun. It really is.
It is.
So what are we doing this week?
All right, so we are finishing up. Responsibility is our theme. You know, we got about 3 or 4 pages into it a couple weeks ago, and it's just too long of an article to do justice to it in one night. So we broke it up into 2 parts. But so what I want to do though is I want to read the last paragraph that we did 2 weeks ago. Okay. Because it was so pertinent. I actually used this paragraph as a topic starter in a meeting last week, just because it's so pertinent, and I think it points to an area where we could use some improvement. Like, sponsorship isn't dead in AA; it just smells funny.
I like that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of times people think that they're supposed to be your coach or, your confidant or, whatever. And really, really good sponsorship can save so many lives, because really what the sponsor is supposed to do is point someone toward the power, help someone take steps that will get them in touch with the power and put them in the comfort of the divine. Does that make any sense, Monty?
Absolutely does. Yes.
So I'm going to start reading on the very bottom of page 331. And of course, we're in the book Language of the Heart. These facts point straight to our next responsibility, that of intelligently and lovingly sponsoring each man and woman who comes among us asking for help. The care and concern with which we individually and collectively do this can make all the difference. Besides, this is the greatest expression of gratitude that we can give for what we ourselves have received. Without much doubt, 1 million alcoholics have approached AA during the last 30 years. we can soberly ask ourselves what became of the 600,000 who didn't stay. How much and how often did we fail all these?
Wow.
You know, what a paragraph. And you know, I've got to tell you, let's say my son or my daughter really needed help, and they were willing to take some advice for me as far as who to go talk to in this Alcoholics Anonymous thing. I would pick someone with working experience with the 12 steps who is actively sponsoring, guiding people through the 12 steps, because I think that would place my loved one in the best possible atmosphere and have the best possible chances for a permanent recovery.
Sure.
But that's not what you can get when you go to some meetings. You can be, you can be welcomed, and you can be made the coffee guy, and maybe you'll get a sponsor who has no experience with the steps, and they'll give you their phone number and ask you to call them. And I just see all that as half measures today, and Monty, what'll half measures get you?
Nothing.
You would think half measures would get you half, right?
Yeah, but they really don't. There's no real payoff with you're doing it halfway. Every time I try to take shortcuts in anything that I've done, I either have to go back and do it right, or I just get so frustrated I quit.
Yeah,
and we don't want to have to do that.
No, and I love the way he says lovingly sponsor. It's not, we're not drill sergeants.
Right.
We have to be compassionate and considerate, but we also have to be making it very, very clear that there are certain expectations for this spiritual work as sponsors. Otherwise we're doing them a disservice. And as the book Alcoholics Anonymous says, we can be aiding in their destruction by allowing them to assume that they're doing all the AA stuff when they're not really following direction.
I suspect that one reason out of many that more folks that have been around a while that have actually sponsored, have actually had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps and so forth, why they don't make the approach as often as they once did, maybe because of poor management on their own part, by holding on too long to somebody who's not really willing to do the work. And so then they get frustrated and burned out on it, and then they just say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. And I think that could be solved if we were clear and direct about what our responsibility is and what we have to offer with the person that we make the approach to, assuming we're making an approach.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Back when I first came in, my sponsorship line, all right, there was like a sponsorship lineage. These people sponsored, these people sponsored, these people sponsored my sponsor.
Yeah.
Now, my sponsor wasn't like this, but the rest of them were. They thought 3 sponsees is max. And so they would get sponsees, and if they stuck with them, they'd be the 3 people they were working with for decades, like being friends with and going out on the golf course. And if someone would ask them for help, they would say, I'm sorry, I'm at my max. We're not supposed to hold on to these people forever. We're supposed to have room for, the newcomer, for, to help the next person. You know what I mean?
Sure. So I have that really brings me to an example. I have a guy, or had a guy that I sponsored. I took him through the steps. He had the spiritual awakening. He's working with other people. He's more plugged in to Celebrate Recovery, I would say, than necessarily AA. But he's running a warming shelter. He's the president of a sober living house. He's in ministry at his church. I mean, and people ask me, how's so-and-so? And I said, he's doing just fine. Well, you guys don't meet anymore? I go, no, not really. Yeah. Because I see the activity on social media. I know where he's at. It's not hard to tell what he's doing, he's a living example of the way it should be. And so I don't have to say, well, my book is booked because he's still my sponsee. I guess, if I were to say, well, I'm not going to be your sponsor, he'd go, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
I have a ton of guys like that.
Yeah.
They're incredibly low maintenance, and they've locked into a way of life that works. So there's very little tuning that go every once in a while, a fine tuning here or there,
right.
But it's not crisis management anymore.
No, therefore, now you're open to take on
New
somebody
people.
else.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and I think that's how it should be done. All right, let's start reading the new stuff here.
Okay.
In no circumstances should we feel that Alcoholics Anonymous is the know-all and do-all of alcoholism. We have in the United States and Canada alone perhaps 100 agencies engaged in research, alcohol education, and rehabilitation. Research has already come up with significant and helpful findings and can still do far more. Those engaged in education are carrying the message that alcoholism is a definite illness and that something can be done about it. All these workers can make our efforts more effective. It is a statistical fact that rehabilitation agencies in the United States and Canada treat something like 50,000 alcoholics annually. When was this article published? 1965. True, their approach is often different from our own, but what does that matter when the greater part of them are, or could become, entirely willing to cooperate with AA? Too often I think we have depreciated and even derided these projects of our friends just because we do not always see eye to eye with them. We should very seriously ask ourselves how many alcoholics have gone on drinking simply because we have failed to cooperate in good spirit with these many agencies, whether they be good, bad, or indifferent. No alcoholic should go mad or die merely because he did not come straight to AA at the beginning. So
Amen.
even in 1965, a lot of people were showing up after they'd been through treatment. But notice how much he's saying AA cooperates with these facilities. You know what I mean? I think that's very, very important for the facility, for alcoholics, and for 12-step work.
So the two entities that I see criticized and poo-pooed the most, at least out here in the West Coast, are the two agencies that support us the most. That's the treatment centers and the faith-based movements.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
do.
Churches, for the most part, they love us. They don't have a problem with us. They're opening up their basements and meeting halls, and they don't even have to come check on us. And the treatment centers, they're automatically sending people. That's just part of what they do. And yet we sit in the meetings and we badmouth them and criticize them. And I'm like, when I hear that, I'm like, seriously?
Listen, I'm very willing to criticize a bad treatment process or something, but I have cooperated with treatment centers for the most part of my recovery money. I've carried messages into facilities more than not, in the decades that I've been sober, and have gained more from that than you can imagine. I do see that some profit-driven entities are focusing solely on things that they can get reimbursed for, and I've got kind of a problem with that because it's hard to get reimbursed for the spiritual, and you and I know how important the spiritual is. But as a whole, thank God for treatment centers. There are a lot. There are probably over 1 million people that their lives were saved by treatment centers. Faith-based movements. We come from a faith-based movement.
Right.
The 12 steps are have been poached from a faith-based movement, and so we need to give credit where credit is due, and if our aim, our goal is to grow spiritually and develop the conscious contact with God, faith-based systems can be very helpful with that.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Yep. You betcha.
Now let's look at the matter of criticism of AA that is made in the world about us. For years, AA has been amazingly exempt from these barbs which society pitches at all endeavors of any consequence, whether they be social, medical, religious, or political. So we register surprise, shock, and anger when people find fault with AA. We are apt to be disturbed to such an extent that we cannot benefit by constructive criticism. Nor are we able to be good-natured about criticism, which isn't so good. While these attitudes are not general among us, it is nevertheless a fact that many AAs do so react when they are hit where they live. Surely this sort of resentment makes no friends and achieves no constructive purpose. Certainly this is an area which we can improve. And again, Monty, I love AA as much as anybody out there. But there are certain areas of improvement, let's just call them, where I see some things that could be done better. Like we were talking earlier on sponsorship. I think sponsorship could be improved in Alcoholics Anonymous. The goal, the responsibility of sponsorship can be better defined. In some of the literature, instead of writing literature about every darn thing in the world, maybe they could hone in a little bit more on really what working with others is saying, and integrate that with a tried and true sponsorship style. If 600,000 alcoholics didn't stay by 1965, maybe something like that could be helpful. I don't know.
So in your part of the country out there, do they still do workshops like GSR training and sponsorship workshops and that kind of thing, or is that kind of?
So there's two basic branches of that. Now the service structure itself, the areas and the districts, will do GSR trainings. They'll do a number of cooperation with the professional community. They'll do things like that.
Yeah.
It's rare in our part of the country for an area or a district to do like a big book study or a big book convention or something. They'll do like a convention with normal speakers, but they won't get deep into literature-based recovery experience type stuff. Those workshops and those one-day AA events or whatever come from grassroots. Like a couple of members will get together and say, hey, let's invite, this person, and this person to do a big book study for us. And it'll be outside of the confines of the service structure. And that's kind of what happens in the Northeast that I've seen.
Okay. Yeah.
Alcoholics Anonymous is not a religion, nor is it a medical treatment, nor does it profess expertise in respect of unconscious motivations for behavior. These are facts all too often overlooked. Here and there, we hear our members proclaiming AA as the great new religion. Except for strictly sobering up operations, we are also apt to underrate medical contributions to our welfare. The fact that psychiatry does not yet sober up many alcoholics sometimes inclines us to think in unflattering terms of that profession. Again, we are forgetting that to religion and to the medical arts, we owe our very existence. It is cardinal principle that Attitudes AA has made great use of all of these resources. It is chiefly our friends who first gave us the principles and attitudes that enable us to live and move today. Therefore, the credit of all these vital contributions should stand aces high among us. Certainly, we drunks did put AA together, but all of its basic components were supplied by others. Here, especially, our maxim should be, let us be friendly with our friends. And that's a saying that's gone far and wide, within our philosophy, our AA philosophy. It is a historical fact that practically all groupings of men and women tend to become more dogmatic. Their beliefs and practices harden and sometimes freeze. This is a natural and almost inevitable process. All people must, of course, rally to the call of their convictions, and we of AA are no exception. Moreover, all people should have the right to voice their convictions. This is good principle and good dogma. But dogma has its liabilities. Simply because we have convictions that work well for us, it becomes very easy to assume that we have all the truth. Whenever this brand of arrogance develops, we are certain to become aggressive. We demand agreement with us. We play God. This isn't good dogma. It's very bad dogma. It could be especially destructive for us of AA to indulge in this sort of thing. You don't hear it as much, but you can still hear it in meetings where, let's say somebody's experience is they did a life story-esque 4-step when they had 4 years sober. And every 4-step meeting you ever hear them in, they'll say something like, I had to wait 4 years to be able to do my 4-step. I had to get my brains out of hock. And what they're doing is they're sharing from their experience and not understanding that there can be different needs. There can be different senses of urgency with this stuff. And just because they took 4 years to do it doesn't mean everybody should.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, everybody shouldn't. If I can be honest.
Yeah.
Newcomers are approaching AA at the rate of tens of thousands yearly. They represent almost every belief and attitude imaginable. We have atheists and agnostics. We have people of nearly every race, culture, and religion. In AA, we are supposed to be bound together in the kinship of common suffering. Consequently, the full individual liberty to practice any creed or principle or therapy, whatever, should be a first consideration for us all. Let us not, therefore, pressure anyone with our individual or even our collective views. Let us instead accord each the respect and love that is due to every human being as he tries to make his way toward the light. Let us always try to be inclusive rather than exclusive. Let us remember that each alcoholic among us is a member of AA, so long as he or she so declares, each alcoholic. Now, he's saying, we can't browbeat people. We can't, we can't be disrespectful. We can't be militant. If someone is in my group and has no interest at all in the 12 steps, doesn't think that they need the 12 steps, I leave them alone. I try to grab newer people, and I try a lot less to convince people who've been around a long time that what they think is working for them isn't working. You know what I mean? It's working, obviously. They're okay, they're happy, or they're at least satisfied with their particular experience in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm never disrespectful or militant to anybody. You got to be my sponsee, I think, for me to be militant, and that's only when it's absolutely necessary. You know what I mean?
I think one of the areas that is pretty easy to maybe sand off the rough edges, and that's when we publicly, with best of intentions, correct somebody in a meeting publicly. Unless somebody's being really out of line and we need to ask them to come back tomorrow for some reason or something, that's one thing. But, when a new guy comes in and he introduces him in a way that's outside of AA language, politically correct AA lingo, I think it's a horrible thing. Excuse me, this is an AA meeting, and the poor guy just wants to shrink in his chair. He's embarrassed, and we've lost him.
Yeah, you can shame people right out of AA.
Wow,
and that's contributory manslaughter. It really is, Monty.
And and there's an area that wouldn't take too much work to just kind of knock that off. Come on now. I mean,
there's conversations sponsors should have with their sponsees. If I don't work with brand new people that much anymore, every once in a while, but I have to teach them about the mores. I have to teach them about, what's acceptable. What's the proper, form to have as an AA member, and that'll be part of my sponsorship responsibility, I think. But I've been in some groups where treatment centers are bringing people in like crazy, and in the treatment center, it's okay in whatever meeting you're in to identify as a drug addict. My name's Chris, I'm a drug addict. Well, if you did that early on, if you did that in some of the meetings I was in, they would stop you dead and say, this is a meeting of alcoholics only. And something like that can be really shaming. And the individual just may not know enough about drug addiction or alcoholism to be able to understand the difference.
Yeah. You know what it means.
So the right way to do that is, after the meeting, go up and introduce yourself and, talk about, talk about kind of how the meeting runs. And, I'm afraid if you keep doing that, someone's going to call attention to you, and it may be embarrassing. And this is Alcoholics Anonymous, and we have a singleness of purpose, and it's not to keep drug addicts out. It's to be have the common problem and common solution. And, what's your deal? I mean, what's your experience with drugs and alcohol, and help them sometimes figure it out. You know what I mean? Instead of doing it like in front of, all 70 members and 40 of them are women, and it's the guy wants to just die. So I'm with you. I'm with you. Some of our more obvious perils will always attach to money, to controversies within AA, and to the ever-present temptation to scramble within AA and outside it for distinction, prestige, and even power. The world around us today, shattered by these untoward forces. As drunkards, we have been more subject to these forms of destruction than most other people. Here, thank God, we do have, and I trust we shall continue to have, a tremendous amount of awareness of our responsibilities for improvement. However, the fear of these forces should not deceive us into absurd rationalizations. In the fear of accumulated wealth and bureaucracy, we should not discover an alibi for failure to pay AA's legitimate service expenses. For fear of controversy, our leadership should not go timid when lively debate and forthright action is a necessity. And for fear of accumulating prestige and power, we should never fail to endow our trusted leaders with the proper authority to act for us. That's some good guardrails. There are going to be times when we're going to have to be assertive, but this is the guardrail your assertiveness should land in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let us never fear needed change. Certainly, we have to discriminate between changes for worse and changes for better. But once a need becomes clearly apparent in an individual, a group, or AA as a whole, it has long since been found out that we cannot stand still and look the other way. The essence of all growth is a willingness to change for the better, and then an unremitting willingness to shoulder whatever the responsibility. In conclusion, it is only fair to say that we of AA have been able, in most areas of our lives together, to make substantial gains in both our willingness and our capability for the acceptance and discharge of responsibility, something that our great gathering in Toronto will symbolize and demonstrate. That was the World Convention in Toronto. I went to a World Convention in Toronto. I think it was the 2000 convention or something, Monty. And it was crazy. I saw people that I'd completely forgotten about. I guess they'd moved away, but they stayed good members wherever they. I'm like, what, Bill? I hadn't seen him in like 10 years. It's really a trip. Are you going to go to the international because it's not too far away from you?
So it's in Vancouver, British Columbia. True.
Right.
I don't think Canada wants me.
I get that.
I think there's a law.
Okay.
They won't let me go. I'm not even sure I'm supposed to fly over the place. You know what I mean?
I get it.
If I can, I probably will show up.
We'll get you an alias. You know?
Yeah, right.
But I would be willing to go. I certainly love Alcoholics Anonymous and would love to celebrate with 100,000 alcoholics or whatever it is. But I started adding up the numbers and the flights from the East Coast, the hotels, the registration fees, the meals, the parking. It'd be well over $4,000, for Andrea and I to go. Yeah, and I just, we just see, that. Yes, it would be a great 4 or 5 days, but we see that amount of money could be more responsibly spent.
Sure. And you've been to World Convention. I've been to one. It was in San Antonio. And I went to the World Convention of Narcotics Anonymous. I don't remember what year it was. It was in San Diego.
Yeah.
And I mean, what a blast. Both of them were a blast.
Oh, it's crazy.
It was the entertainment. I mean, oh my gosh. I got to see B.B. King and Kenny Wayne Shepherd playing together.
Wow.
And B.B. King, they both played a riff that took about 30 minutes nonstop. And you could see the muscles in Kenny Wayne Shepherd's arm popping out when he was doing the lead guitar.
Those are both very good guitarists.
Oh, my gosh. And B.B. King, he's just sitting there on his stool, and nonstop playing. I'm like, how in the world? I mean, gee whiz. But what Dr. Dijon, the jazz guy, he was there. I mean, and the speakers in both were just phenomenal.
I can imagine.
Very good.
They usually do a really good job, like with the Saturday night speakers and all that. All right. As we look into the future, we clearly see that an ever greater willingness will certainly be the key to that progress which God intends for us as we move toward his appointed destiny. Man, Bill had a way with words, our appointed. Do you understand that we have an appointed destiny, Monty?
Yes.
Isn't that cool?
Yes, that is. And what's so unfortunate is the amount of people that cross our path that don't understand that yet. And you just pray and hope that they will.
Yeah. There's some lost souls out there, directionless, purposeless, and I'm incredibly grateful I'm not one of them anymore.
Yeah,
I was. I was wandering in the wilderness. I know you were too.
Man, yeah, like a candle in the rain that had burned out. All right, next week, the guidance of AA's World Affairs, an article from 1966. So that's going to be interesting, listeners. Listen, if you want to catch up on all of these, listen to the end of the broadcast here, and I'll tell you how to do that. When we are all done with this, we will be making a flash drive available to you for you to be able to pick up. Just pay for the postage, and we'll send it to you. It'll be it's going to be quite large. I mean, we're already at this is Article 88, or Show 88 anyway, that we've done. So. There's going to be a lot of information on there. But I love this stuff, Chris, because once again, we're looking at the history and some of the filet mignon of this meal that we've taken part of called Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
And it's something to experience and be part of. It really is. All right, listeners, God bless you. And until our next broadcast, this is the Monty Man along with Chris S. and the rest of the Take 12 Recovery Radio family. And we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you. For more recovery workshops with Chris S. and the Monty Man, visit our website at take12radio.com and click on the Recovery Workshops banner.
This has been a broadcast of Take 12 Recovery Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
This has been a Chicken and a Pig production.
Kitty, 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 kitty. Meow, meow, meow.
Woof, woof.